Hi, I'm Christine Sloan with Insider NJ, and today we're having a conversation with State Senator Richard Codey. Of course, Governor Codey needs no introduction. He led New Jersey from 2004 to 2006. Governor, thank you so much for joining me.
My pleasure. This is kind of different, but it is what it is.
It's a new normal, so we'll
Well,
go with it.
there's not a lot of reporters shouting questions, so
It's good for politicians, right?
yes, absolutely.
Get a break. So, Governor, you have sponsored several bills, one of them very controversial, Senate Bill 3242, which would prevent state prosecutors, assistant prosecutors, attorney generals from seeking office. Some call it government overreach. What do you have to say to that, and why is this necessary?
Well, it's necessary because we've all seen many prosecutors, federal level, not so much, thank God, on the state level, who have used your office for political purposes. And if you don't believe that, you must believe in Santa Claus. Because whether it's Spitzer, Giuliani, or Christie, or whomever, and we can't touch federal people, obviously, but they used it for political purposes, and that's horrific. That's not justice. That's not even close to justice.
If you're a politician who is honest, has nothing to worry about, what is that? How does that affect you? Like, why is this necessary?
Because those who are political and who want to use the prosecutor's office for political gain, there is no justice. That is horrible and horrific. So that means the real people who are out there doing bad things, murders, rapes, all kinds of financial crimes, don't get prosecuted because they don't get the best press conference out of that. But if the mayor took $5,000 to have his driveway done from a contractor for the town, suddenly the investigators come up to his house at 6 in the morning, and shockingly, the FBI is there to arrest him along with the press. Now that's against the law for a prosecutor to tip off the press, but people got away with it, and it was shameless. And that should never, ever happen again in any state in this country. And since we can affect it in New Jersey, it's a good thing.
So federally, this would be unconstitutional. Do you,
No,
no, you don't think so?
not until a court of law says so.
Do you expect legal challenges?
Bring it on.
You're dealing with a lot of legal minds in this case, prosecutors and state attorney generals. Where's the bill?
That's all right.
Is it sitting on the
It's
governor's
already, it's
desk
already
right now?
passed the Senate
Yeah.
with no negative votes from either side of the aisle.
So it's sitting on Governor
It's
Phil
over in the
Murphy's desk,
assembly awaiting hearings and committees and hopefully on the floor.
and you anticipate him signing it?
If the governor gets it, I bet he will.
So the other bill that you've sponsored expands New Jersey's hate crime law to protect members of the media. Tell us a little bit about it.
Listen, if you want to criticize my speech in terms of an issue or anything else, I'm fine with that. That's not going to bother me. But unfortunately, in these times, in the last 4 years, as we both know, people went over the top, and if somebody in the press didn't agree with our president or the other party, they got vicious about it. And I'm very vicious. Um, we may agree or may not agree, but the press is free and should have say what they saw, what they think is right. They make mistakes, we make mistakes, but it never reaches the level of violence, and nor should it ever. And let's admit it, it's come close, very, very close.
Well, certainly, former President Trump bashed the media and created a very dangerous environment for a lot of journalists. What do you think that
Yeah,
does
I
to
don't say, and
democracy?
it's horrible, and I don't say that as a Democrat at all. If a Republican did it, if a Democrat did it, I'd say the same thing. You have to have respect for the system, and you can't just go out and make up things. I know as Mr. Trump did, and by the way, I knew him pretty well. So, Christine, I knew him. I had written all the casino laws,
Yeah.
so I dealt
Tell
with
me
him.
about your the relationship you had with
Experience
him.
with him. So, well, let's see what I can say. So, I wrote all the casino laws for maybe 10 years in New Jersey. He wasn't in the first 8 years, maybe. Then he decided to come in, and I can recall one meeting with him, and he's in my office, and we're talking over a certain issue. And he was never out of line with me because he knew I had power over him. That's a big difference. So one thing, he invited me and my aide to lunch at Trump Towers, and he could not get over the fact that we're going to pay our own lunch. He wasn't used to that.
The Donald Trump that before his presidency, any different from the man we saw while he was president?
He wasn't so outrageous back then as he was as president, but he was emboldened at that point. There's no doubt about it, but I think he grew up thinking he could do a lot of things that you or I or the average citizen wouldn't do.
So I want to ask you, where do you think the country's headed?
We're still not in a good position when people run for president, two people, the head of each major party. Mr. Trump lost, and all he needs to do is say, I lost the election, like any of us would do. That's not right. You create this idea that he somehow had the election stolen from him, and there is no evidence whatsoever that that happened. It's just, you don't come out as a good loser, certainly. And I don't know whether or not he has a future in terms of winning another presidential election. He certainly has captivated a big part of the Republican voters, no doubt about it, and some Democrats. But I think a lot of them are looking for a new person. But as long as he's around, he's always going to be a thorn in the old Republican establishment. So they're going to have a hard time. But it's going to be interesting, Christine, to see Mr. Christie try to out-Trump Trump. I don't think that
What do you
happens.
think of that? I mean,
Well, see, I don't.
he should run.
Yeah, but the Trump people don't like him. They see that they felt that he used them. So where does he go? To the center of the spectrum of the Republican Party? I don't know. I really don't. I saw where the conservative convention did a poll of their conventioneers, and he didn't get one vote. So he's turned them off. There was what he thought was right, and it turned out, in terms of for the Republican voters, it was a bad thing to do as governor of the state of New Jersey. So I just don't know whether he has the mojo to do that and understand he only got maybe 5% of the Republican voters in the primaries that he engaged in. So that was a poor showing, and it's going to be very, very tough to raise that kind of money after that poor showing, and now you're no longer governor, you have no office.
What was your relationship like with him?
I did not have a real relationship with him as governor. I saw him as a bully, frankly. I was friendly with him before that. I was able to do some things for him to get the job as U.S. attorney. But as U.S. attorney, I got turned off because his focus was on political prosecutions. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but I felt that some of those were done only for political purposes to help himself run for and win the governorship in the state of New Jersey. And that to me is very, very offensive.
Well, Governor Cody, Governor Christie has spoken on that and has always denied that. And I just want to say that so that
That's fine.
we are protected.
And
But
he's got his opinion. I got mine.
absolutely, I understand. Sir, can you, I want to stay with this with Liz Cheney now ousted. It seems like the Republican Party needs to rally behind one person because, well, it seems like they are rallying behind Donald Trump. Do you think, I mean, so much can happen between now and the
Oh,
next election?
absolutely, positively.
You know that, of course.
There's no doubt about that. Oh, it's not one day being a big turnaround in your life in politics like mine did.
Well, you've
One
been in
day I was
public.
president of the Senate, and I will.
Sorry about that. Go ahead.
I've been in politics a long time, right?
What kind of strategy would you want if you were, in the Republican Party? If you were, with Republicans, what would you suggest that they do? Because right now it just seems
You
like,
have to find a way to keep the Trump voters, as many as possible, but reach out to another percentage that are more moderate, but are willing to go along. Now, I'll tell you this. I believe that if he never had gone on Twitter, he would have been reelected easily. But if he's going to keep running his mouth and say things that are outrageous, he loses more and more people. I remember he was campaigning recently, obviously for the election, and he kept saying, suburban women, what's wrong with me? Oh, geez. So he had a lot of them, and he lost them because of the things he would say. They were uncomfortable with him, and many people were, and many people should have been uncomfortable with some of the things he said.
well, certainly the one thing that people have suffered through this past year is the pandemic and the coronavirus. It's been so difficult for so many people in New Jersey, across the country, and you've sort of seen it firsthand being a funeral director.
Oh, I certainly did. And one of the things I saw that was very disheartening is a 51-year-old man passed away. They called us and said, please embalm him. His mom and dad are dying of the virus as well. They died roughly about 2 weeks later. So what we did was we had the burial, no visitation. And so there was about 40 cars or more. So they surrounded the cemetery and the plot. We buried all three of them in the same plot. And they said they were not getting out of their cars for fear of the virus. So they lowered their car windows, and myself and my manager and a priest with a bullhorn conducted the service. I'm not going to see that again. All right. Yeah. I'm not going to see a woman, a mother, buried with her 34-year-old daughter, both of whom died from the virus, in the same grave. So those are the kinds of things we saw. One time early in the pandemic, we had made arrangements with a family, and there could only be 8 people at a visitation. So we went immediately to the cemetery. And as we got towards the grave, I could see about 30 people, with about 6 of them with wire cutters, cutting the fences and pouring into the gravesite. And I turned to the cemetery caretaker. I said, I'm not going to stop him. Are you? And he said, no.
Wow.
So it was just a thing of compassion. They weren't there to create a problem. They wanted to pay respect to their loved one, and they could not come to the cemetery, the funeral home, because of the rules of only 8 people.
Yeah.
We hopefully will never, ever faced with a lot of funeral directors off phones. They just couldn't hold anymore.
Wow, it's
Um,
heartbreaking, Governor.
yes, it's
Heartbreaking.
very,
Just
very hard.
hoping that I'm hoping that better days are ahead of us.
But the one thing I had mentioned about after about 9 or 10 months at least of the pandemic, I said to Judy Bersicelli, the Commissioner of Health, I said, Judy, I haven't seen any suicides. She says, yes. I said, no, none at all. Usually we'll see maybe 4 a year. And now, of course, our business has increased dramatically. I've seen none. Now, I did see 4 ODs, all females, ages 37 to 57, which really you don't see anymore. So she called me back the next day and she said, Governor, I can't believe this. You're 100% correct. Suicides are definitely down for the year after a year with the pandemic.
Wow.
So now people keep telling me that depression and anxiety is up, but for some reason it hasn't come to the point of suicide. So there's going to be a lot of studies done, as we both know.
Well, this is
Uh,
very personal to you, Governor, right?
yeah, I mean,
Family.
listen, yeah, I think a lot of New Jersey knows that my wife has suffered severely from postpartum depression and depression in general. Has been a survivor, and then of course when I was governor, a shock jock went after my wife, saying, the first lady, tell her to get her ass in the kitchen and bake cookies. So the next day when I came into Trenton, my staff and the trooper said to me, here's what happened on the radio last night. I'm scheduled to go into the radio station to do a 7 o'clock show as a call in to ask the governor questions. His show ends at 6:55. Radio stations are as big as some restrooms, right?
Yeah.
That's it. So we were in there, and there happened to be a reporter there. We didn't invite her, and he comes out at 6:55, and I get right in his face, and we're doing our thing, and then the troopers broke it up, and it was a huge reaction. Mayor Bloomberg called me from Europe. He said he read it over there. And fortunately, people did side with me, but it wasn't something that we were enjoying, I can assure you. My sons were in high school.
Yeah.
So it was a tough, tough time. Now, the person who did it was Craig Carton, now a big star on FAN, and of course went to jail for taking people's money for tickets and never bought the tickets for millions and millions of dollars. So you never know in politics what's going to happen. But we go out in public and people do thank us, and we're appreciative for what we're doing, and we want to continue to do. We want to start a program to get mental health counselors into the schools. Right now, the counselors deal with it, but their job is all issues. All right. So we want to get just people in schools who are mental health counselors to talk to the students who want to talk to them about what they're experiencing and how to deal with it. So that's our major push um, going back after the pandemic, because we had visited quite a few schools, were extremely well received, and I really enjoyed it immensely. And I see it as like, my life's work right now.
And you're talking about your foundation.
Yes, the Codey Fund for mental health.
Well, I just want to end this with, you've always been there to cheer people on during difficult times. What do you want to say to people right now as so many people are suffering? Is there any kind of advice you can give to people to just carry on, to keep going, no matter what obstacles and pain they face?
Yeah, I mean, you can call the Codey Foundation. That it's not rare over the last 10 years to see people coming into my house and talking to my wife especially about their problems. And our success rate with many of those people is very high. And when we see them, they run up and hug us and kiss us. And it's all people in our living room, whether they're black, white, brown, male, female, young, old, all trying to get better. And we direct them to facilities throughout New Jersey if they need to be hospitalized. And we had just put out a major campaign to direct people to NJ211 to get help, and people are responding to that. And we're very, very fortunate to be able to provide that to people. We also did something that was different, Christine. I went to restaurants that were family owned in northern New Jersey, gave them a couple $1,000 because they were down in the dumps.
Wow.
And then I would pick Monday or Tuesday because those are slow days. And I said to them, I will pick up, me and my wife, um, every check and reduce it by 15% to help your business. And I enjoyed the heck out of that.
That's
Um,
incredible,
I
Governor.
recently, I was recently up in Sussex County at a small restaurant, and I was just about to leave, Christine. So this gentleman comes in and can sit down and talk to you. I said, sure. So he says, my granddaughter has severe scoliosis, and she needs an operation, and it's $140,000. She has New Jersey Cares. They don't pay for it. We have raised $70,000. Can you help me? I said, sir, if I can help you, I will. Well, within 4 days, I spoke to the gentleman at St. Peter's in New Brunswick, Les Hirsch, the president. I said, uh, Les, here's the situation. Here's the date where they're supposed to have the surgery. He says, I'll get back to you. 3 days later, he says, Gov, we've got that surgery covered. I mean, that's what a treasure that is. She's
I'm,
having the operation May 26th. And
mhm.
hopefully by a few days after that, I'm going to go up there and give her a big hug, and she's going to give me a big hug.
That's
So
a
that's
great.
what it's all about.
Well, that's what it's all about during these difficult times, Governor. And thank you for that. And, thank you for joining me. It's always a pleasure talking to you. And we certainly had a long conversation.
Okay, have you read all those books behind you?
Uh, I'm going to say no. You're the first person who asked me that. Thank you.
You know I would be the only
I
one
tend
probably
to
that would
read
ask
all
that.
of them, is what the answer is. Governor, thank you so much.
All right, thank you, Christine. Bye now.
My pleasure.